There comes a time in every person's life when God closes a door that we were still trying to walk through. A time when someone we thought would stay forever suddenly disappears, drifts away, or fades out without explanation. And it leaves us wondering, why would God allow this? Why would God take someone out of my life who mattered to me? But what you must understand today is this. When God removes someone, it is always an act of protection, direction, or elevation. God never subtracts without the intention to multiply. He never takes without the intention to give. And he never allows loss unless that loss is carrying a hidden blessing. Sometimes the greatest miracles of your life are disguised as people walking away. And one day, when you look back, you will thank God for every no, every closed door, every exit, and every separation that didn't make sense at the time, because what he removed was blocking what he was trying to bring. The first keynote reveals one of the most powerful truths about divine relationships. When God removes someone from your life, it is never an accident, and it is never meant to harm you. It is always an act of protection, preparation, or promotion. Yet in the moment, it rarely feels that way. When someone leaves, especially someone you cared for deeply, your immediate reaction is to question yourself, question them, or even question God. You wonder why things ended the way they did, why the relationship suddenly shifted, or why the connection that once felt so strong now feels distant. But the truth is this: God sees what you cannot see. He hears conversations you never heard, sees intentions you never noticed, and knows the future you cannot imagine. And because he loves you too much to allow anything or anyone to sabotage the purpose he placed inside you, he steps in even when you don't understand it. Divine removal is painful because it interrupts what your heart wanted, but it is also purposeful because it protects what your destiny needs. Many times, the people you tried to keep close were not meant to stay. Their presence carried hidden dangers, unseen limitations, silent draining, or spiritual interference that you were unaware of. You may have thought the relationship was stable because nothing noticeably toxic was happening, but God saw the long-term impact. He saw that if the connection continued, it would weaken your growth, dilute your calling, or damage your identity over time. And because he values your assignment, he removes what puts it at risk. It's important to remember that God is not only the one who opens doors, he is also the one who closes them. And his closed doors are not punishments, they are protections. When someone walks away without explanation, it is easy to interpret the separation as rejection. But rejection from people is often protection from God. It is heaven stepping in to pull you away from something that would later hurt you more deeply. You must recognize that God doesn't always protect you by showing you everything. Sometimes he protects you by removing what you wouldn't walk away from on your own. There are relationships you prayed to keep that would have destroyed your peace if God allowed them to continue. There are people you wanted forever with who were only meant for a season. There are connections you cried over losing that heaven-celebrated ending because God knew what was coming before you did. Every time God says no, he is saying yes to something greater. Every time he subtracts, he is preparing to multiply. Every time he removes someone, he is making room for someone better aligned with your calling. God will never let you lose what you truly need. He will only remove what blocks his will for your life. And sometimes the blessing is not in what you gain. It is in what you avoid. God sees the traps, the hidden motives, the future heartbreak, the spiritual battles, and the slow draining that you cannot see yet. His removal is a rescue mission, even when you don't recognize it as one. Think about the moments when someone left and you thought your world was falling apart. Now think about what happened afterward. You grew, you healed, you discovered new strength, you experienced new opportunities, you found deeper peace, you became more of who God created you to be. Many times, what you thought was the end was actually the beginning of a new chapter God had prepared for you. People leaving didn't break you. It shifted you toward your destiny. And if you look closely, you will notice that what you lost was never necessary for who you are becoming. This keynote teaches you to trust God's wisdom more than your own emotions. You may not understand why a relationship ended, but you can trust that God's hand was in it. You can trust that his protection often looks like separation. You can trust that his love sometimes sounds like silence. You can trust that his guidance sometimes closes a door you were trying to force open. And you can trust that his plan for your life is too important to allow the wrong person to take up the right space. What God removes is never meant to stay. What God ends is never meant to continue. What God closes is never meant to be reopened. And what God takes away is always replaced with something that aligns with his purpose for you. Instead of asking, why did they leave? Start asking, God, what are you making room for? Because every exit prepares the entry of something greater. Every loss clears the space for new blessing. Every separation shifts you toward your future. You are not being punished. You are being positioned. You are not being abandoned. You are being protected. You are not losing. You are being aligned. When God removes someone, it is because your destiny is too valuable to be shared with the wrong company. And one day you will see that what left your life was never meant to stay, and what stayed was never meant to leave. That is the beauty of God's divine protection. The second keynote reveals a truth many people feel but rarely understand. God removes people when their presence begins to drain your spirit, weaken your purpose, or delay your destiny. You may not notice it at first because draining relationships do not always come with loud arguments, obvious conflict, or visible toxicity. Sometimes they drain you quietly. Their presence slowly becomes heavier than their contribution. Their energy weighs on your spirit. Their words chip away at your confidence. Their attitude creates tension inside your soul. You start feeling tired in ways you cannot explain, emotionally exhausted, mentally overwhelmed, spiritually distracted. And it isn't because they did something dramatic. It's because they are misaligned with where God is taking you. When someone is meant to be in your life, there is a natural flow of grace. Conversations feel uplifting. Time together inspires growth. Their presence increases your peace rather than disrupting it. The relationship may not be perfect, but it is fruitful. But when someone is not aligned with your destiny, the atmosphere changes. You begin to feel a slow spiritual drain. You may find yourself praying less, feeling less motivated, or losing focus on your purpose. You may feel constantly tired after talking to them, even though nothing bad happened. That inner heaviness is not random. It is a divine signal. It is God's way of alerting you that this connection is no longer healthy for your spiritual growth. God is far more protective of your destiny than you realize. He knows that wrong relationships delay the right future. He sees that emotional exhaustion leads to spiritual stagnation. He knows that staying connected to people who drain you will eventually weaken your faith, dull your hearing of his voice, and distract you from your calling. So he steps in, not in anger, not in judgment, but in love. God knows that a draining relationship today becomes a destructive relationship tomorrow. What starts as small emotional fatigue grows into spiritual confusion. What begins as minor tension becomes major distraction. God removes people early because he sees the long-term damage you cannot yet see. What makes this difficult is that draining people are not always bad people. They may be kind, familiar, caring, or well-meaning. They might have been helpful in a previous season. They might even be people you deeply love. But not every good person is a God-aligned person. Not everyone who feels familiar is meant to walk with you into the future God is preparing. Some relationships were right for who you were, but not right for who you are becoming. And so when their presence begins to slow your spiritual momentum, God begins the process of separation. He may create distance. He may cause the communication to fade. He may expose incompatibility. He may stir discomfort in your spirit, or he may allow the relationship to naturally dissolve so you can step fully into the next stage of your growth. You know God is removing someone when you start feeling more stressed than supported, more drained than energized, more anxious than peaceful. You may find yourself losing clarity, losing passion, or losing inner strength. And every time you try to push through, something still feels off. This is because your spirit knows when a relationship has expired, even if your emotions are still holding on. What you interpret as confusion is often God whispering, "This is not my will for you anymore." Many people pray for breakthrough, promotion, clarity, and spiritual growth, but they don't realize that some breakthroughs cannot happen until certain relationships end. You cannot rise while attached to what pulls you down. You cannot accelerate while connected to someone walking in circles. You cannot hear God clearly when surrounded by voices that drown out his guidance. And you cannot step into your destiny while tied to people who drain the strength required to pursue it. Sometimes God must weaken the bond so that you stop strengthening something he is trying to end. Sometimes he allows conflict so you stop forcing a peace that never belonged. Sometimes he closes the door because you wouldn't stop knocking. God will disrupt a draining relationship because he knows it is impossible to walk in purpose while carrying a burden he never asked you to carry. What God removes is not meant to be your responsibility, and what drains you is not meant to stay connected to your spirit. You will notice that after certain people leave your life, you suddenly feel lighter. You experience clarity that was missing for months. Your emotions stabilize. Your prayer life sharpens. Your energy returns. Your peace increases. You begin to feel like yourself again. This is not coincidence. This is spiritual confirmation. It is the evidence that God removed what was weakening you. Your soul often breathes a sigh of relief long before your mind understands what happened. And this is why you must trust God when he removes people. He is not taking something valuable from you. He is taking something harmful off of you. He is not depriving you. He is delivering you. He is not breaking you. He is freeing you. God would never allow someone essential to your destiny to drain your spirit. If their presence pulls you down, God will pull them away. Your calling is too important for you to remain tied to relationships that diminish your strength. Your destiny is too significant to waste energy on draining connections. God needs you focused, grounded, and equipped, and he will remove anything and anyone that threatens that spiritual foundation, because God's plan for your life requires your full energy, not the leftover pieces drained by the wrong relationships. When God removes a draining person, he is opening the door for restoration, healing, and new relationships that will nourish your spirit instead of draining it. He is preparing you for connections that align with your purpose, strengthen your faith, and empower your destiny. Trust his removal, because behind every draining exit is a divine elevation. The third keynote reveals a truth that becomes clearer the more you grow. Not everyone who starts with you is meant to finish with you. God has a divine plan for your life, a path carefully designed for your purpose, and there are seasons where he calls you higher, but elevation always brings separation. When God prepares to take you into a new dimension of maturity, influence, blessing, or responsibility, he begins removing connections that cannot breathe at that new altitude. This removal does not mean the person is bad, and it does not mean you failed. It simply means your destinies no longer align. Some people were built for where you were, not where you're going. It is natural to want certain relationships to stay. Human hearts hold tight to what feels familiar, what feels safe, and what feels comfortable. But comfort can be the enemy of calling. You may want someone to remain a permanent fixture in your life because the connection was meaningful, supportive, or even loving. Yet God sees the future you cannot see. He knows the conversations that will happen years from now. He knows the changes that will appear in their heart. He knows the spiritual weight required to step into your next season. He knows that a relationship that fits you in one chapter may restrict you in the next. And because he loves you, he removes people who cannot survive the altitude of your purpose. When you climb higher spiritually, emotionally, and mentally, the air becomes thinner. It becomes harder for certain people to understand you, support you, or walk with you. Some people lack the character for your calling. Their loyalty only fits a lower level. Their mindset cannot grasp the vision God placed in you. Their faith cannot handle the growth you're stepping into. And if God allowed them to stay, they would eventually sabotage your progress, not out of evil, but out of limitation. They cannot help you become the person God is shaping you to be. You may start noticing distance in relationships that once felt close. People who once celebrated your victories begin to fall silent. Those who used to walk beside you no longer seem aligned with your values, your discipline, your boundaries, or your spiritual growth. Tension rises where there used to be harmony. Misunderstandings occur more frequently. You feel spiritually mismatched, emotionally disconnected, or mentally unaligned. These are signs that God is shifting your circle. When God elevates you, he is not just blessing you, he is protecting your purpose. Every next level comes with new responsibilities, new challenges, and new opportunities. Not everyone can handle the weight of that next level. Some people would hold you back because they fear change. Some would limit you because they feel intimidated by your growth. Some would discourage your steps because they prefer the version of you they were comfortable with. That version, the smaller, quieter, more limited version, was easier for them to handle. But God is calling you higher, and people who remain tied to old seasons cannot accompany you into new ones. Separation is one of God's loudest forms of guidance. He doesn't always remove people through dramatic endings. Sometimes he fades them out quietly. Sometimes he allows natural drift to happen. Sometimes he exposes incompatibility. Sometimes he reveals that the person's heart is not aligned with yours anymore. And sometimes he simply closes the door and refuses to let it reopen. This is because he knows your destiny is sacred, and he refuses to let the weight of the wrong person keep you from rising into the fullness of who you are meant to become. This keynote also teaches you something important. You cannot force people to stay at levels God never called them to, and you cannot lower yourself to keep relationships that were only designed for earlier seasons. If God is calling you up and someone else chooses comfort over growth, familiarity over transformation, or stagnation over advancement, then you must let God separate what no longer fits. When you resist the separation, you sabotage your own elevation. You delay blessings, opportunities, and breakthroughs that God cannot release until you are surrounded by the right people at the right level. It is painful when someone you loved or relied on cannot go with you into your next season. But pain is not the enemy of purpose. Misalignment is. And God will break your heart before he allows someone to break your destiny. He sees the relationships that look harmless today, but will become burdens at the next stage. He knows the connections that will drain you, distract you, or derail you. So he removes them early, clearing the path for the people who will walk with you into your God-designed future. Look back over your life at the people who left unexpectedly, the relationships that dissolved, the friendships that faded, and the connections that didn't survive your growth. Now look at who you became after they left. You grew wiser, stronger, more disciplined, more prayerful, more focused, more aligned with your calling. You stepped into opportunities that would never have come if the wrong people were still in your life. Their removal was not a loss. It was preparation. The truth is simple. The version of you that God is building cannot stay connected to the version of people who refuse to grow. And God will always protect your destiny before he protects your comfort. When he separates you from someone, it is because your future is too valuable for you to stay tied to a relationship that is too small for where he is taking you. You must trust that if God removed them, they were not meant to witness your elevation. And the people who are meant to stay will not fear your growth. They will fuel it. They will not be threatened by your calling. They will celebrate it. They will not hold you down. They will lift you higher, because the right people will always be aligned with the right destiny. The fourth keynote reminds us that when God begins to protect and elevate a woman, he also empowers her with a divine strength that is not rooted in her personality, her background, or her circumstances, but in his spirit working within her. This keynote highlights the spiritual truth that God never calls someone without equipping them, and he never positions a woman for influence without giving her the grace to stand firm, the courage to speak, and the resilience to endure the pressures that come with her calling. Many times, women underestimate themselves because life has conditioned them to see weakness where God sees power. They absorb the negative opinions of others, the wounds of the past, and the fears that whisper to them that they are not enough. But when God sets his hand upon a woman, he begins to break off every internal limitation that has held her